What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for some more content for you guys today, and we're going to be focusing on the academy. A lot has been made out of the academy. Obviously, the under-21s got to the final of the PL2 Cup, falling short of the last hurdle, but they did finish top of the PL2 and then ended up winning the playoffs as well. So a lot of players, not just inside the under-21s, but under-18s and various players out on loan. So we've got 16 players to go through, and what better person to come and join us as David Harris from the Irish Hotspur, who's been doing watch-alongs for each and every under-21 game this season. So let's bring him on. Dave, how you doing, mate? It must have been better following the under-21s than the actual men's team, first team to this season.
Do you know what? It's been a remarkable turnaround for the under-21s. It's a league they were due to get relegated out of last season, but due to some changes within the structure of the league and stuff, Tottenham stayed in it, and they've gone from relegation all the way to champions, which is a remarkable turnaround. And do you know what? I wasn't expecting the joy that they brought me this season, but look, I was pleasantly surprised, and they had a great campaign. And through some of the bad periods this season, I've seen some greatness at under-21 level.
Even a trophy at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, first time since it's opened. Hopefully many more to come. But I picked out 16 players to go through today, so I want to get your opinions on these players, not just how they've been this season, but what you think the future plan for next season should be. And do you think they can push for the first team? Do you think they need a loan? What do you think the plan of action should be for these particular players? We're going to start off with the goalkeepers, with Luca Gunter, 19 years of age, a player which really came to the fore towards the end of the season. I mean, the games that I was watching, he was making remarkable saves. Yeah. What's your opinion on Luca?
Look, he was the beneficiary of Josh Keeley going out on loan. You know, Josh Keeley held that spot for half a season before he went out on loan to Barnet. And since he stepped in, you know, he's really risen to the occasion. He's pulled off some great saves this season, and most importantly on the playoff run as well. You know, when it really mattered, he stepped up with some crucial saves, and at times kept Tottenham in games, which allowed them to go and win it as well. So for me, I think he's had a really good end to the campaign. And he's also trained with the senior team at points this season as well. Let's not forget that. He's been brought up and done a bit of training with them. And rumours is that I think there was Sonny was very impressed with what he's seen from him as well, and Vicario as well. So, yeah, I think he's got a big future at Tottenham Hotspur. It's just how do we develop him, because we're already stockpiled with the likes of Alfie Whiteman, you know, Brandon Austin, who signed a new contract and stuff like that, without them actually really getting much first team exposure or experience out on loan. But for me, I think someone like Luke Gunter is ready for a loan move, and I would suggest that I wouldn't be surprised to see him put out on loan next season, because there was a guy from the under-18s also put out on a short term loan towards the end of the season this season, and I reckon he'll probably end up stepping up into the under-21s with Luca Gunter going out on loan.
And how do you think he compared to Josh Keeley, who obviously was playing majority at the beginning of the season?
Look, I think Luca Gunter's good with his feet, but I think he probably needs to develop that side of the game. I think that's where Josh Keeley is probably ahead of him, streets ahead of him, I would maybe argue, is Josh Keeley is more of that modern-day goalkeeper who is expected to play with his feet, can sort of have a good range of passing as well. And that's where I think Josh Keeley is ahead of him. In terms of shot stopping, I actually think they're both on a similar level. With Josh Keeley, I think one thing I've learned from him when he's been out on loan with Barnet, he's had a really good campaign with them, but there has been on some occasions this season where maybe he's been caught out with balls over the top. You know, his timing on coming out, maybe clearing them, some of his positioning at times, and it's sometimes under corner kicks as well, coming in set pieces. That was exposed maybe at under 21 level in the Premier League, not the Premier League Cup, the cup where they the cup where they play some of the lower league teams from League One and League Two and stuff like that. He was exposed sometimes from set pieces. I think that's areas of Josh Keeley's game where he needs to work on. But I think he's got time. He's one that it went really under the radar this season with Josh Keeley, actually, that Tottenham extended his contract by a further year. They had that option in his contract. He extended that while he's on loan out in Barnet. And there's really high hopes for Josh Keeley in and around Tottenham. But also over here in Ireland, there's really high hopes of what he can become. But I think with Josh Keeley, the difference between Keeley and Gunter is I think Josh Keeley's 2 years older than someone like Luca Gunter. Josh Keeley's 21. So I think Luca Gunter has time to sort of develop that passing side of his game and stuff like that. But you never really know the true test and the measure of these guys unless they really are put out on loan and tested. And I think Josh Keeley is tested. Luca Gunter isn't really at that level. And I think that's the next step for Luca Gunter to take, get a loan move and, make it pay off.
Well, when you're judging Josh Keeley and Luca Gunter, obviously Josh Keeley went to Barnet in non-league football. So next season, do you expect maybe Josh Keeley to step up, maybe one league into into League Two, maybe around, and then Luca Gunter to go to that level in the National League?
I think Josh Keeley could step up another couple of divisions, if you want me to be brutally honest. He was really recently brought into the Ireland squad as well, the senior setup, which is a huge step up from him from the under-21 level. And the guy he had on loan at Barnet is another Dublin guy. He's an Irish guy, and he sort of looked after his development, and he criticised him where Keeley needed to be criticised for some of the mistakes. But Josh Keeley really put in some really good performances for them as well, some man-of-the-match performances, some really big saves at key times. So I think Josh Keeley, I think he could step up another couple of divisions, and I think Luca Gunter probably will go National League, maybe League One.
Moving on to the defence, I want to talk about Alfie Dorrington, 19 years of age, a bit of a stop-start season with injuries this year. 2 major injuries, I believe he's had, but there's a big reputation about him. Big, strong defender, likes to play the ball out the back, good ball-playing defender. It's a bit frustrating with the season he's had because the team have done so well, but he's been a part of a bit part figure, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's had 2 major injuries, and more so in the second part of the season. He had a hamstring injury there for a while, and then he got himself back, played the quarterfinals against Liverpool, and then picked up another injury, which meant he missed the back end of the campaign, the semi-final and the final, and also the cup final that we lost in as well. And he was a huge loss in that cup final as well. But someone like Dorrington, I think where he stands out streets ahead is his ball playing ability. He's almost similar to Romero in that regard, that he takes charge of taking that ball, he can run with it, he can play with it, he's got a good range of passing on him as well. And that's what really excites me about Dorrington, is that for a modern day fullback, it's very important that they can play on the ball as well as defend. And I think he's got all the key attributes. With Dorrington, it's interesting because people may forget that he's been on the bench a few times this season. He was called up when we had that injury crisis, and Postecoglou actually name-checked him and Donley earlier on in the season as emergent talents, sort of talented prospects coming through. And at the end of the quote, when he spoke about Donley and Dorrington, he name-checked Dorrington again. So it'd be interesting to see what the next step is for Dorrington. Do they keep him around, or do they decide to loan him out?
Do you, obviously he's a player with a big frame, isn't he? He's quite tall, and I think there's been those videos circulating of his passing ability, I think, on social media throughout the season. For you, were you a bit frustrated that he didn't at least get some sort of opportunities when we had all those injuries at centre back, or do you feel like he wasn't quite ready this season to make an impact at that level?
Do you know what? There's a lot of concern that fans have in general about giving some youngsters an opportunity, but I'd make the case that sometimes giving youngsters opportunity has saved managers' career. Pochettino, when he was at Tottenham, turned to the youth academy at one stage despite having a big squad, and it almost bought him the time that he needed to go on to have the career he did at Tottenham. Sir Alex Ferguson, with the class of 91, sort of changed the course of his career at Man United. Lewis Miley at Newcastle this season, has come in and stepped up and maybe kept Eddie Howe in the job a lot longer and stuff like that. So I think there's actually a lot of benefits to giving some of these guys the opportunities. And in years gone by, like we've had international players sitting on the bench called upon them, and they've never been ready to go. Whereas in a young player trying to make the grade, for me, if they've got the natural ability in terms of they can handle the ball, they can defend, they're good in the air and stuff like that. For me, it's just about clearing the pathway and giving them the opportunity, and maybe being brave enough to give them the opportunity. And that's one thing I was maybe a little bit disappointed with Ange Postecoglou to a degree. At times, I think there was 1 or 2 times he turned back to Eric Dyer, even though he had no plans for him, rather than give the minutes to someone like Dorrington. And that's, for me, I do find that a little bit frustrating, because you never really know if they're good enough unless you give them that opportunity. And we're at Tottenham Hotspur, we're one of the only clubs in the Premier League and probably across Europe that don't really give youngsters the opportunity. And it seemed like the pathway was clear for him this season to maybe get a couple of minutes. I think there was one stage we were beating a team 3 or 4-0, and we could have had the opportunity to bring him off the bench, and we didn't. So I do find that very, very frustrating. But for me, going into next season, we're going to be competing on all 4 fronts, hopefully have about 60 games to compete in. You're going to need a squad of 25 players plus 4 or 5 from the academy that you can rely on at times. And for me, he's one that I would keep around and have a hybrid next season. If he's not required for first team, let him play under 21 football and mix it with some senior games when the right time comes about.
Ashley Phillips up next, 18 years of age, really successful loan spell at Plymouth this year where he got Player of the Year, I believe, for Plymouth. He looks like a player which is like physically beyond anyone that we have in the under-21s, and at the ripe age of 18. I mean, what do you think the plan should be for him next season?
Look, we brought him as a huge prospect that from Blackburn Rovers, and when we brought him in, he already had some championship games and cup games under his belt. He went on loan to Plymouth second half of the season, also with Alfie Devine, and the guy he went on loan with was one of the England underage managers who already knew Phillips, and he brought him in, and interestingly enough, he played him in a back three on the right side of a back three. Defensively, I think Phillips is well able to handle himself. I think where he probably needs to progress is probably on the ball, Ben. I think sometimes it's a bit inconsistent with him playing out from the back. You look at Van de Ven, he can also play on the ball and play out from the back, and in the Postecoglou system, you have to be very competent on the ball as well as your defensive duties, and for me, that's one area where I think Ashley Phillips sort of needs to improve. I had a Plymouth fan on at the end of the season, and he said he was very happy with Ashley Phillips overall, but he thinks that Ashley Phillips would probably benefit from another loan move, maybe to a team chasing promotion or a team, fighting at the bottom of the Premiership.
So when you're judging the two, Alfie Dorrington and Ashley Phillips, who do you think's further ahead at the moment in terms of their development?
Look, for me, I'm going to go Alfie Dorrington. I think is further ahead because I just think he has the ball playing aspect to his game that maybe Ashley Phillips doesn't have the confidence to maybe show. And I think, especially with the way Postecoglou likes to play, that's very important. The way we build out from the back, being able to handle the ball, if the passing option isn't on, being able to run with the ball and create them passing options almost. And I think Dorrington has that about him. Plus, he can defend, I'd argue, as good as Ashley Phillips. When the two of them were as a partnership for the under-21s earlier on in this season, I mean, there was not a lot getting by them. They were absolutely unbelievable as a partnership. And for me, I just think Dorrington stood out above the parapet over Ashley Phillips because he had that other side to his game. And like I said, Postecoglou name-checked Alfie Dorrington, even though he had Ashley Phillips at the time as well. So I think maybe Postecoglou also feels the same.
Interesting. A player that is really interesting to me, Dante Casanova, 19 years of age. I think he's a central midfielder, potentially a right back. I think he can play both those positions by trade, but because of injuries, he's been drafted in at centre back quite a bit this season. And he's actually really impressed. I know we have been leaking quite a lot of goals second half of the season. But how do you feel he's come on this season?
Do you know what? Dante Casanova's an interesting one because it wasn't so long ago the club were sort of maybe leaning on letting him go, but then ended up offering him his first professional contract. Like you said, he is a centre midfielder, can play right back, but especially the second half of the season with injuries and some of the players that we've sent out on loan, he's had to fill in at centre back, and he's done reasonably well. He's done okay. I don't want to be harsh on the guy because he has been playing out of position, but he was maybe sort of found out in the cup final against Fulham. It was his early mistake that led to Fulham gaining that confidence, scoring that early goal. And for the next 45 minutes, up until the second half, he was very, very jittery. Now, fair play to him, he regained that composure in the second half, but was almost too little too late. We were already, way behind at that point. But saying that, in the final of the playoffs to become the Premier League 2 champions, I thought he was absolutely outstanding, and he held his nerve. So for me, like you said, he's 19 years of age, but it's an interesting one. I think he'll be kept around next season. I don't think he'll be sent out on loan. I don't think he'll be kept around in terms of a view of a first-team appearance. I think they'll keep him around and look to develop him.
Next one as well, who's really impressed me when I've seen him, is Rio Kaimaten, 18 years of age, also a central midfielder by trade, but the games I've seen him in, he's been deployed as a fullback, particularly in a game, I think, in one of the playoff games, I think it was against Aston Villa, where he got a goal and an assist. I think it was Villa, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was brilliant in that game, looked like he's got a real technical ability and an eye for a pass. Do you think that he's potentially one that can go out on loan, or is he going to stick around again as well?
Do you know, he's a very interesting one, Ben. I remember watching him in the Under-18 Cup final last season. He was absolutely superb in that game as well. this season with the under-21s, like you said, he's a centre midfielder by trade, but he's filled in at right back and left back. And for me, the majority of the games that I've seen him in, he's been a very consistent performer. He's very good on the ball. He can get on the ball, drive at players. He can turn the ball over. He's not afraid to get stuck in. But like you said, he's got an eye for a pass as well. He sets up players, and he's also got an eye for a goal as well. I really like Kieran Menton. You know, for me, the sign of a good player is someone that can play in multiple positions and doesn't really look out of place. And the reason why he can do that is because technically he's efficient and he's got a footballing brain. He knows how to read the game as well. And you're right, it was that game against Aston Villa. Now, I will counter that. I think against Liverpool in the the quarterfinals, we were 3-0 up. And sort of they really exposed him at right back for their comeback. That was probably the only really bad game I've seen. And it's a shame as well because there was a lot of noise about him. And then there was a lot of eyes on that Liverpool game. And it sort of unraveled for him in that position. But for me, I think he's been a really consistent performer throughout the season. Again, he's on the young side of the under-21s. Let's not forget this. I think he's one that you could put out on loan, and I think he will go out and actually do a really good job for a team. However, I just have a feeling that Tottenham will keep him around.
One that's, on the names on everyone's lips at the moment is Tyrese Hall. Started off in the under-18s this year, got promoted to the under-21s, one of the star performers in that central midfield. He went out to Australia, came on in the second half, and I thought he was brilliant in that game. He's got a bit of an air of Moussa Dembele about him, the way he twists, the way he turns, the way he can retain possession. Do you think because he's so young, maybe we'll keep him around, or maybe a loan spell for him? Or maybe even part of the first team?
Do you know what? Tyrese Hall is a very interesting one. Like you said, he had a really prominent rise this season. He spent sort of half the season with the under-18s. He played, 17 games, 6 goals, 4 assists. He's absolutely ripping it up. And that's where I really sort of started to take note of Tyrese Hall. It was almost like every match report or every highlight they were putting out, he was heavily involved. And they sort of brought him up to the under-21s and put the test to him again. Okay, can you replicate that at the under-21 level? For the under-21s, 14 games, 2 goals, 3 assists. And, he stepped up in really big games across the playoffs as well. But he's a really, really consistent performer. I remember watching him in the under-18s Cup final last season with Jack. And I remember saying to Jack, that kid's hard work is going to pay off for him. If he keeps that, you could see him in a Tottenham jersey in the future. And that's the biggest thing to Tyrese Hall. Although he's got the ability, and he knows it as well, he's also got the hard work to match it. He's relentless. He does the defensive side of the game. He does the attacking side of the game. Scores goals, create goals, turns ball over, and he switches play as well. One thing I love about him at times is when things are chaotic around him, sometimes he can just get on the ball, take a touch, spray it. Sometimes there's little bits of Luka Modric where almost the ball comes to him and he already knows what he wants to do with it. And that's a sign of a really good player. Now, I believe that there's been some interest from Man City in this guy towards the end of this campaign. It'd be interesting whether to see Tottenham, are forced to sell him or not. I know that he's been tied down to a new long-term contract recently, which is very good for Tottenham Hotspur. But he's one that has garnered a lot of attention across, the English game over this season. And you know what? He also made it up to the senior squad for the Man City game off the bench, like you said, and then got games out in Australia. I actually think he's one that's going to be kept around. Like I said, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 Tottenham under-21 players that will be kept around and used in the likes of the Europa League, Cup competitions and stuff like that. And I think that's where their development will come next season and the bridge will come for some of these guys next season. I think he's one that the club have earmarked. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I saw Windy COYS said, he's obviously someone who watched the academy a lot, and he said, in his opinion, Tyrese Hall is one of the best academy products he's seen for a very, very long time. So for you, is he one of the best right now in our academy? And how long before you reckon he starts playing regularly for the first team?
Look, it's very hard to argue that, that he's not. He's had a meteoric rise this season. Everyone knows his name. He's got a new long-term contract. One thing I really like about Tyrese Hall, and where I think everyone sort of, where a lot of the reputation has come from when people have watched him is he's one of them players. He's always on the half-turn when receiving the ball, and he takes players out of the game. He beats 1, 2, 3 players. He's exciting. He's deadly in the final third as well. Look, with Tyrese Hall, I think he's a guy you could see maybe get minutes next season. Now, like I said, if he maintains that hard work along with the ability, I think you'll see him get a couple of minutes next season. He's only, 18, 19 years of age?
18,
I think.
yeah.
And we need a number
I
6,
think,
don't we, Dave? We do need a number 6.
yeah, we do need a number 6. But look, for me, I think it could be similar to Papa Matasar. I think once he gets the opportunity, I think he'll surprise a lot of people. And I think he'll lay down the gauntlet to say, this position is mine. I want to take it off you. Look, like all youngsters, you need to give them the opportunity. And you have to be patient with the youngsters' development. You look at Sir Alex Ferguson over the years, he knew when to dip them in, to take them out and stuff like that. And I think that's what you're going to see with some of these youngsters. I think you see that with Hall next season. But I think he's a name you'll see in a Tottenham jersey in the senior team in years to come.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be looking at age. If you're good enough, you're old enough. Look at Cesc Fabregas at 17 coming into the Arsenal team. They never look back. Lewis Miley, he's got his opportunity and really taken it with both hands. The next player I want to talk about, another central midfielder in George Abbott, 18 years of age. He's captained the side. He captained them in the PL2 final. I'm not sure if he was captained the whole way through, but what can you tell me about him?
Do you know what? He's an interesting one because he doesn't seem to come with the same reputation as a Dorrington, a Hall, a Donley. But he's one that's sort of flying under the radar. And one thing about Abbott, I will say this season, is his work rate in that midfield is absolutely relentless. He turns over a lot of ball, and he's the real sort of holding midfielder in that under-21 team, with Tyrese Hall allowed to get forward a lot more. George Abbott has been absolutely sensational. If you remember, I think at the back end of last season, he came off the bench and made his first team debut under Ryan Mason.
Yeah.
Look, for me, I think he's one that needs a loan move. I'm not sure he's ready to step up into the first team yet. I think, although he's a very good player, I think, and he's decent on the ball as well, I think he's one that I would test out on loan first before really making a decision. But look, like that, he's got a couple of years. He's only young as well.
It interests me, though, why he's picked as captain, because I look at the team and I see Jamie Donley maybe as the leader of that team. So how come George Abbott has been blessed with the captain's armband?
I'm not too sure, to be brutally honest with you. On that one, Ben, I don't know what the decision was behind it. I think maybe the decision behind it was that, he just leads by example on the pitch. You know exactly what you're going to get from him and stuff like that. And, he's, like I said, I'm not sure why maybe he was given the captaincy, but I know he's well liked in and around the squad, well liked in and around the academy. The coaches really like him and stuff like that. So for me, I'm not sure why he was given captaincy, but he does lead by example. It's relentless hard work, turns the ball over, and maybe that was one of the decisions behind it.
Well, we're going to get into the forward players now, and there's some of these players we need to make a serious decision about, and maybe Jude Sunsop-Bell is one of them, being 20 years of age. We brought him in from Chelsea just a couple of years ago. He is a striker by trade, has been deployed on the wings mostly this season. 23 games, 10 goals, 6 assists, was up for Player of the Year in the PL2 this year. But I was speaking to you about him a month ago or so, and you told me that he had quite a bit of a drop-off second half of the season.
Yeah, especially towards the end of the campaign, he was more of a feature off the bench than he was in the starting lineup. Look, Sunsop-Bell, I think he's got incredible talent. Like you said, he was brought in as a striker, but same as Jamie Donley was a striker right the way throughout the age groups and stuff like that. But there seems to be a big focus on playing Will Lancashire up there this season and maybe really developing him as the striker. And Jamie Donley and Sunsop-Bell have been played out of position, to maybe accommodate Will Lancashire. I'm not 100%. Maybe that's because they have the adaptability to be able to play other positions and still be as deadly in the final third. And maybe Will Lancashire doesn't have the ability to play a right wing, or that maybe cam role. Maybe that could be the reason. With Sunsop-Bell, Ben, I think he's a really good player. He's really exciting. He works hard out of possession. He's decent on the ball as well. But towards the end of the season, he found himself out of the team. And I'm not sure whether that was maybe due to struggling with maybe a niggle, some injuries and stuff like that. But even coming off the bench, the performance levels were nowhere near the same they were at the start of the season or midway through the campaign. And he wasn't affecting games the same way either. Look, for me, I think Sunsop-Bell will probably be loaned out next season. And if there's no interest, he'll be kept in and around the academy and maybe developed further. But I think next season he'll have to have an even better campaign if he wants to put himself on the map the way Donley has, the way maybe Will Lancashire has, Dorrington has, people like that.
What's his best position? Is he usually up front or in the number 10 kind of position?
He's playing on the wing.
Well,
On the wing? Where do you rate
yeah, he's played
the
on.
most?
Look, he's playing on right wing most of the season. I can't really speak for him up front because, you know, he's more up front in his Chelsea days. We haven't really seen him up front for Tottenham. But on the wing, he's a capable winger. I'm just not sure whether he has the standard to make the step up. He hasn't maybe grabbed hold of games or affected games maybe the way Donley has, for instance. So for me, I think he's one that we need to continue to develop.
And at the age of 20, I mean, surely if he is going to stick around in the under-21s, this probably would be his last year before he can, you know, really make a claim for stepping up or getting a serious loan. And I don't know if you've seen, Thailand are trying to nab him from England. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I've seen that. I knew that he sort of had that dual nationality. Same with Donley, actually. You know, Northern Ireland and England, there's a bit of a tussle going on there as well. Look, if I was Sunsup Bell, personally, I'd probably hold out, see if I can make the England squad. If I don't, then, you know, if I want an international career, go out and represent Thailand. Nothing against, but, like, you know, with England, you know, his profile will be bigger and stuff like that.
Next one is Iago Santiago, 21 years of age, 21 games a season, 9 goals, 8 assists out on the left wing. Has had a really good season, but now at the age of 21, surely a serious decision has to be made about him.
Do you know what, Ben? There's been a lot of noise about Santiago this season, but I've sort of been against it to a degree because he's been one, like you said, he's 21 years of age. He's one of the older players in the setup. A lot of the others are all 18, 19 years of age, still have a few years on their side. With Santiago, he's had a really good campaign this season. Don't get me wrong. I think compared to other seasons, he's looked a lot better. He's upped his output in terms of goals and assists. Before a 21-year-old, there's some games I felt, especially that cup final against Fulham, where maybe things weren't going right, that you're looking at maybe some of the older guys to maybe step up, grab the game by the scruff of the neck and lead them. And I just felt like Sunsup Bell went hiding. And it's not the first time I've seen that from him this season. Some of them goals that we talk about, some of them are when he was doubling up in games as well. It's not like it's been consistent across the whole campaign. He's got 1 year left on his contract, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you know what? For me, I don't even think it makes sense to put him out on loan. I think he's one that Tottenham would probably look to get off the books this summer.
You don't think he's anywhere near good enough to, you know, because there's a lot of call for him, especially when, you know, Brian Hill was getting a few opportunities down the left-hand side. Why not give Santiago a go? But you're firmly in the camp that Postecoglou made the right decision there.
Well, I weigh it up. He's 21. Someone like Brennan Johnson's 22. And although I still think Brennan Johnson has a long way to go to sort of impress me and convert me to being a Johnson fan, he has a lot more impact at senior level than someone like Santiago would. And for me, I think that's where he'd struggle. I don't think there's any benefit to sending him out on loan because I don't ever think he's going to reach the levels. You know, Mikey Moore made the step up from the under-18 straight into the senior team this season. If they had plans for Santiago, especially at 21 years of age, it would have been him brought up and Mikey Moore would have went into the under-21s to replace him. And that didn't happen, which maybe shows me that although he's developed well this season and took his game on from where he was, I just don't think it's anywhere near good enough to make the step up to the under-21s. And I know it sounds harsh, and I don't like being harsh on these youngsters because they've got their whole career ahead of them. But for me, I just think his time has been and gone.
Alfie Devine up next, 19 years of age, had loans at Port Vale and Plymouth both this season, so he did make the step up from League One to the Championship, and I think that he did it quite well. Was in and out of the team at Plymouth, but I think when he was on the pitch, for the most part, he'd done himself, he did well. Do you think that maybe another step up, maybe to a better team in the Championship or a lower team in the Premier League, or do you think, because whenever I've seen him play, he looks like one that's nearly there.
Do you know what? I really like Alfie Devine, but I'm not sure this season has maybe been the progress that maybe he expected. He done well at Port Vale and he was playing in maybe that deeper midfield position. And Ian Foster came in at Plymouth and he worked with Alfie Devine. I really liked Alfie Devine from the England underage setup. And he brought him into Plymouth. And he tried to play Alfie Devine in what he sees as his best position as a number 10. But Alfie Devine, you know, there was a bit of inconsistencies to his game. Some games he was really good, and then some games he was almost anonymous. Now, don't get me wrong, it was always going to be hard in a team like Plymouth, who are scrapping to survive relegation, and they've had change in managers, change in formation. The manager was trying to implement a new style of play. But he also got sent off and maybe let that manager down, and he got sacked after that game. And he did find himself back in the team, and he stepped up the last 2 games to the end of the season to really help Plymouth get over that line and save them from relegation. But when I was speaking to the Plymouth fan, he feels that he also maybe needs another loan to where he can thrive over the course of a whole season at a championship club. Look, I really like Alfie Devine. We signed him from Wigan when he's had a really high profile around Tottenham for years. But I'm not even sure championship is the right loan move for him. For me, I'd like to put him across Europe where they like to play with more of the ball on the ground and stuff like that and really see the impact he can play. Somewhere where maybe it replicates the way we play to a large degree and see what he can do in that sort of system. But I wouldn't write him off being kept around next season. The homegrown quota of that squad really needs to be addressed this summer. You know, it's one part of the reason why we went and signed Brendan Johnson after we let Harry Kane go. So if he can come in and have a really good preseason, he'd do himself the world of good. So let's wait and see what happens. But I think he will be given that opportunity in preseason before any decision is made on him.
It's interesting with Alfie Devine because he said, he thinks his best positions in further forward as well. But it does seem that his best performances have come deeper. So if he was to go on loan, where do you think Spurs see him? Would they want him to be playing number 8, or do you reckon they would want him to be playing further forward?
I think they'd like him to be playing further forward. I think Alfie Devine himself would like to be playing further forward as well. So for me, I think that's where you're going to get the best out of him. Playing him in more of a deeper role where he has to do the uglier side of the game, maybe muck in a bit more challenges and stuff like that. It's not really his game. His game is getting on the ball, turning, making things happen, playing people in. And for me, I think that's where Tottenham should look to put him out on loan next season. Don't get me wrong. They tried. When Ian Foster came looking for him, the idea was to play him in a number 10. But at Plymouth, they played almost 2 number 10s, which was a bit weird. And he played on the left side. Huh?
With Morgan Whittaker.
Yeah, with Morgan Whittaker. So it was a bit weird. But for me, I would like to see him put out in one of the forward areas, maybe in that number 10 role, or even on the right wing where he played for Tottenham in pre-season.
A player that is gathering a lot of excitement is obviously Jamie Donley, 19 years of age, 14 assists and 6 goals in 20 games this season. And whenever I've watched the under-21s, he does look a bit of a level above everyone else on that pitch from an attacking perspective. I feel like he shouldn't be part of the under-21s again next season. I think you should either draft him into the first team or look for a loan to get him consistent minutes next season. I mean, after watching him, throughout the season this year, do you have the same feeling?
I have the same feeling. For me, if this guy doesn't make it into the first team over the next couple of years, I want an inquest at Tottenham Hotspur on what went wrong, because this guy, like you said, Ben, is head and shoulders above everybody else in that team in terms of his attacking play, his footballing brain, everything. He's absolutely streets ahead, and he's streets ahead than most other under 21 players I've seen at other clubs this season. He's absolutely phenomenal. This is a guy that always came through Tottenham's system as a striker, scoring boatloads of goals. But then last season, because of, not the season where we won, but the season before that, because of a lot of injuries on under 21s where we got relegated, he stepped in, he had to play on the wing, centre midfield and stuff like that. And it's almost helped him come in terms of this season, because for me, it was a shootout between him and Will Lancashire as a striker. But Donny has also shown that he's equally effective as creating goals as well. And what I really like about Donny is it's his passing, it's his vision. You're not only you're talking about the weight of pass, which is always spot on, by the way, but it's the way he plays them. Rather than bending it around the fullback into the winger's feet, he's splitting the centre back and the fullback for the winger to run onto. The balls that he finds for Will Lancashire, almost curling them in and stuff like that. It's stuff that I've almost wanted Maddison to start producing this season, which he hasn't. For me, he's absolutely exceptional in the build-up play, creating goals, but he scores goals as well. He gets into the box. And what I love about him is the calmness of his finishing. There was one goal he scored against Man United in the back end of the league run. It was Cantona-esque. There was all this chaos going around him, and he just chipped it over the keeper. Absolutely unbelievable. Against Liverpool, where maybe we were struggling or waiting for that one player to maybe grab the game by the scruff of the neck and really drive Tottenham forward. The guy stepped up with a goal from just inside the halfway line. David Beckham-esque against Wimbledon. Absolutely unbelievable. His first appearance on the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season against I think it was against Man City. He's popping balls around like De Bruyne. This guy has the talent. Not only has he recreated some of the goals of legends of the game like Cantona, Beckham, he's got the passing of some of the best I've seen in the game in De Bruyne, Luka Modric. He's absolutely fantastic. And for me, I think it's a crime if we don't give this guy an opportunity. Let's not forget he's left-footed as well. Tottenham don't have an abundance of left-footed players, and they've really struggled to maybe find left-footed players in the market in years gone by. They rely on a lot of right-footed players playing on the left wing. So for me, I think we have to get this guy opportunities next season. I think he's made 3 or 4 sort of appearances off the bench this season, which is a huge plus for him in terms of his progression. But for me, I don't want to see him loaned out. I think if you loan him out, you could get him washed up in some of the poor loans that we picked for players in years gone by. I want us to keep him around our first team, around the quality players, and develop him. And I think he'll become even better. For me, he's just a kid really waiting for meaningful minutes to show everybody what he can do.
And he would be in competition with Maddison, or as all competition with the strikers?
Do you know what? It's interesting. I wouldn't even write him off, coming in on one of the wings either. I think he's that good. He can play anywhere across that front line. For me, I'm not going to sit here and determine where I think Tottenham should bring him through. All I'm saying is that this guy's got the quality to play any of them forward positions in the senior setup if given the opportunity and given time. And for me, he's good enough. Look, I would like to see him come through and given a couple of minutes maybe in Maddison's position. That's where he's been really comfortable this season. But regardless, whether it's up front, whether it's off one of the wings, for me, this kid really has the talent and can play anywhere. You just got to give him the meaningful minutes. He's absolutely fantastic. But not only comes with the talent, you got to have hard work. You've got to have a good grounding. And this guy works absolutely relentlessly out of possession. Johan Lang done an interview there not so long ago where he spoke about, throughout from the first.
No, you're right, Dave.
So Johan Lang done an interview there a little while ago where he spoke about the first team right through to the academy having one philosophy, and we've seen that with the under-21s this season with the way they've tried to play and set up their ideals and values out of possession, how they're going to go about winning the back pressing. And Donley this season, every single game, he's really hard working. And for me, the true test was when we came up against some League 1, League 2 sides in the cup competitions earlier on in the season. He was the standout Spurs player in some of them games. Some other players maybe went missing that maybe people expected to step up. He didn't. He stood up and was counted every single game this season. And for me, he has to get into the first team next season. We have to part away for this guy and give him the opportunity.
Dave, you mentioned, the likeness to De Bruyne and Modric and all these great players, but when I look at him, I only see one player there, and that's Harry Kane. The way he can drop deep, dictate the tempo of the game, his ball-playing ability, his hard work, his tenacity, finishing ability. I mean, everything about him just seems to be very Harry Kane-esque.
I've seen a lot of comparisons to Harry Kane, but I don't want to put that burden on my guy. I really like Donley.
Just Kevin De Bruyne instead, then.
Yeah, I just think with Tottenham, Harry Kane is someone that is really going to be really hard to emulate and something that is going to be stuck with every sort of striker that comes through at Tottenham Hotspur, especially underage who bags goals. But you're right. Harry Kane, not only did he score goals, but he created goals. He's got everything about him. But look, let's wait and see whether the club give him the opportunity or not. Be interesting to see, whether his camp as well want him to go out on loan. For me, I just think we need to show a little bit of patience. I think, again, he's one that I keep around next season, and you do a hybrid. If he's not required for the senior team, play him in under 21 games, and then give him opportunities in the senior team next season.
Mikey Moore up next, 16 years of age, 12 games, 14 goals and 7 assists for the under-18s this year. Obviously, he has been drafted in to the senior team for the last 2 games of the season. He's currently setting the world alight at the Euros under-17s for England at the moment. Top goal scorer in the tournament. Got another game tonight, I believe, against Italy in the quarterfinals. Do you think this guy is really that good at the age of 16, 17 by the start of next season that he could be part of the first team next year?
Do you know what? I was trying to figure out towards the end of the season Did Mikey Moore go from the under-18 straight into the senior team because they didn't want to break up the under-21 team and some of the success that they had come towards the end of the campaign, where they could have won the cup, which they lost, and then they also won the league? And I was trying to work that out, but ideally they could have just brought Mikey Moore into the under-21s and pulled one of them players up. So I do believe that they really sort of do believe in this guy's sort of development, his talent. This guy is supremely talented, and one thing that sets him above the rest is his first control. It's absolutely unbelievable, which buys him that time to make all of his decisions. When he's dribbling, the ball is almost stuck to his feet. He's deadly in the final third. But one thing I really like about the guy is he drags players towards him, which means all you got to do is run off him. He feeds you in. You're in on goal. He's absolutely unbelievable. And I believe they've been really impressed with what they've seen from him in terms of the training up with the senior team and stuff like that. Of course, we got a couple of minutes, towards the end of the season, which is great for his development. But again, he's one for me. When you've got a young player with that technical ability, that quality, and that good of a footballing brain at his age, you don't loan these guys out to go and play with lesser players. You bring them up into the senior team to play with quality that you've already got, which will bring them to a new level. And again, I think he's one that you keep around next season and you give him his opportunity. He's getting recognition right across the UK, especially with his performances for the England underage teams. But also, we've known about him at Tottenham Hotspur for quite some time. He was instrumental in the under-17 Cup win last season and was unbelievable. Stepped up in the final as well with a goal, and he's carried that on into this season for the under-18s. Of course, he had an injury earlier on in the season, which maybe you might have seen him maybe make that step up to the under-21 level. But he's been shoehorned straight into the senior team, and playing with the likes of Sonny and people like that can only really make him a better player. And I think he's one that we will look to keep around.
Did you see Simon Davis's quote on him earlier today? He said he was asked about Mikey Moore. He said it's encouraging that the manager sees something in Mikey, but it is just potential at the moment. He's 16. He's not even 17 until August. So he's a young boy with high potential, and we have several of them in the academy. It's exciting for the academy to have players so young on the bench, but we have to stay calm and consistent because at the moment it is just potential. So we're hearing that. Do you agree with him, or do you think we should be getting more excited about him?
No, I agree with him, and then I'm going to caveat it. So give me a minute. I agree with him in sense of that. Maybe right now there's a massive knee jerk with some of the attention on the under-21 players. Get them in. And I agree with it to a certain extent, because some of them should be brought up into the senior setup. You look at a lot of the links for some of the players we've been linked with, two guys at Middlesbrough, all young guys. Why are we going out shelling money on them when we've got some of our own guys that we can produce and save that money to go and buy better players for the first team and bring these guys up? So for me, that's what I would be doing. But saying that, there needs to be patience. To expect an 18, 19-year-old to walk straight into the first team setup from day one next season and play the whole campaign and come out with unbelievable numbers, it's not going to happen. But what you can do is develop them right. You can bring them in, bring them off games. If they do well off the bench, start them in games, dip them in and out. It's what managers do with really young talents, and it's about developing that talent. That talent is there. He's not going to be the savior of Tottenham Hotspur next season. He's not going to fire us to a Premier League. But it's how we nurture that talent, and that's where we've gone wrong in years gone by. We have never given youngsters a pathway, and they've ended up leaving the club. But to caveat what Davies has said there, Daniel Levy, when he appointed Ange Postecoglou, said that Postecoglou has a strong track record of developing players and an understanding of the importance of the link from the academy to the first team. He said that when he announced Ange Postecoglou. And the fact that they tied the likes of Dorrington, Donley, and they've done their best to get Mikey Moore down to the contract he can have, because I don't think he's eligible for a professional contract yet. You think he's on a scholarship contract, so they'll have to tie him down to a professional contract when he turns 17, I believe, and I think he probably will sign. But we've Tyrese Hall, a new 5-year deal at the end of this season. We've signed a lot of them down to long-term contracts, and with what Daniel Levy said when he hired Postecoglou, I believe the next step is the pathway. It's just about being patient, because I get it. Like, for me, sometimes you give the kid the opportunity, he can surprise you. But I think what Postecoglou, and he's also said this season, it's about having a stable environment and then bringing that youngster in and giving him the best opportunity to thrive and show what he can do. So for me, I think he's right in what he's saying, that we do need to give it time and patience. But one thing I do take from it, it's good that they're recognizing that we've got these talents there. So it's up to them now to develop it, and hopefully they can do it this time around.
Dave, with Spurs just getting Timo Werner on a year-long loan, extending that for a further year, do you feel that might give Mikey Moore a bigger pathway to get in the future years?
Look, first of all, I'm not happy with the Timo Werner signing. I need to get that out there. I don't think he solves a problem whatsoever. But I think maybe the idea behind it is to maybe alleviate a bit of the pressure on Mikey Moore, because, Mikey Moore, you probably won't see until around the Christmas period next season if we keep him around, where we maybe are carrying a lot of injuries. You've got a lot of games coming in thick and fast. You might see him in around the first team there. But bringing Werner in allows you to give that time to Mikey Moore to develop. If we suffer an injury to Stone, touch wood, we don't, first game of the season. If we didn't bring in Werner, Mikey Moore's your next guy in. It's a lot of pressure to be putting on a 16 or 17-year-old kid, to expect him to hit that level of consistency. And I think by bringing in Werner, I think it just allows him that time to develop over the course of next season. The fact they didn't make it permanent shows they're not clogging up the pathway.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's the kind of argument I was making about Timo Werner and Mikey Moore. Last three players to get through: Will Lancashire, 23 games, 23 goals, 2 assists in the under-21s this season. With the age of 19, would you reckon keep him around? Can he challenge for that 9 spot, or does he need a loan spell?
Do you know what? I really like Will Lancashire. He's one that's really impressed me over the course of the season. He's really developed over the course of the season as well. I think his all-round game is good. One thing we've learned when we lost Harry Kane is that you need a player up front that can also play with his back to goal, hold up the ball, play others in, a bit of link-up play. Will Lancashire has that. But not only that, he makes good runs. Like he spoke about, he was going through some of his goals at the end of the season, and there was one where Donley got the ball. Donley didn't even look at him, and he was just like, he didn't even need to look at me. I just knew where to go. He'd find me, And he's got a real good link-up with someone like Donley and stuff like that. And he scored a bag load of goals, and of course, he's the Premier League 2 player of the season as well. But I do feel at times in games, he's had like 6 chances and maybe bagged 2 goals. And I'm talking about really good chances, by the way, where he should be hitting the target a lot more. And I think for me, I think he's got all the aspects to become a really good player. He's one that we identified from Sheffield United, where he was bagging a load of goals there as well, and brought him in here. But for me, I think he's one that I would send out on loan next season. I think the difference for me for the step up is at senior football, especially as a young guy, you might only get 1 or 2 chances that come your way. Completely different to under 21s, where you could get 6 or 7 that come your way. And I think that's where he needs to learn to maybe become a lot more clinical. And I think a loan move will help him in that development. Once he becomes clinical, I'd expect him to see him in the Tottenham setup in future. But for me, I think he needs that loan move to learn that side of the game, where you're not going to get 6 or 7 chances. You have to be on it. You have to take them when they come.
Yeah, physically, he seems one of the more ready players, doesn't he? He looks very broad, quite tall. Why do you think maybe there's not the clamour, even like with the goals he scored? You know what? I think 23 goals, I think in all competitions over 30 goals. So why do you think there's not maybe the talk around? Why hasn't he been involved in maybe some of the first team squads like a Donley or a Mikey Moore, considering all the goals he scored?
Look, you want me to be brutally honest? You could put me up front. I'm 5 stone overweight. I could have bagged 20 goals in this team with the likes of Donley and that behind me. Tyrese Hall, Sun Suk Bell, when he was on fire, producing the chances he was, I'd bag at least 20 goals. For me, I think there's a real recognition that maybe the clinicalness, like I said, sometimes he's getting 6 or 7 real good chances. When you had players like Michael Owen coming through at the age he did, he was bagging nearly every single one of them. With Will Lancashire, almost feels like he has to miss a few before. At Premier League level, it's devastating. You don't get that opportunity, too many times. So for me, I think that's where the real progression needs to happen. Like you said, he's one of the bigger guys. His all-round game is really good, but he really needs to develop that clinical nature, and I think that's where the loan move will help him make that transition.
Yeah, it's mad to me, and it's mad probably to everyone watching, saying that he's scored 23 goals in 23 games and he needs to be more clinical. But I think you're right, that is where he's at the moment. Dane Scarlett, this is an interesting one. 20 years of age. When Jose was here, he was calling him the diamond of the academy. He's gone to Ipswich, didn't really get much game time. He's come back, a few sub-appearances in the first team, maybe 1 or 2 games in the under-21s. A bit of a wasted season for him this year, wasn't it?
I feel sorry for Dan Scarlett, because he was sort of brought back here in January, and we were in a position where we couldn't actually loan him out to another club due to how many clubs you can play for in the one season. So we had no option but to keep him around here, and I think that's why eventually we ended up sending Valise out on loan. So, we didn't maybe have too many people in and around and stuff like that to sort out the squad registration. But do you know what, with Dane Scarlett, he came through the academy scoring a boatload of goals, a real prospect for England as well. But with the loan moves, he hasn't really maybe bagged the goals that many people maybe thought he would out on loan. And I think that's where maybe the skepticism comes in and around Dane Scarlett. Don't get me wrong, the amount of appearances he has in senior football for 20 years of age will help him somewhere along the line. He'll learn a lot from that. But as a striker, yourself, guys, you have to score goals. You just have the aim of the game. The fact is he's still got time on his side. I think we'll put him out on loan again next season.
And last but not least, it's your boy Troy Parrott, who's had probably his first successful loan spell in his career so far. He is 22 years of age. He's bagged 14 goals and 4 assists out in the Eredivisie this season. Do you feel like it's time to move him on with his stock never been as high as it is now? Or do you think it's time to give him a go?
Do you know what? With Troy Parrott, of course, I have huge hopes because he's Irish and everything else. That Tottenham could produce a really good striker, the next great one since Robbie Keane and stuff like that. Parrott, and he came through with a big name around him. He's bagging goals in the European youth leagues for Tottenham Hotspur like there was no tomorrow. He was absolutely sensational. But a lot of his loan spells, he's just broke down with injuries, and it was the same again this season. Even when he got going, another big injury that kept him out for quite some time, that almost stagnated his progress this season. Now, of course, he did pick it up towards the end of the season again, but the biggest problem with Troy Parrott at 22 years of age is he can't stay fit. He keeps breaking down with injury. He doesn't have too much long left dressed around him in from the Dutch league. The Italians well interested. So for me, unfortunately, I hate to say this because he is a fellow compadre of mine, but I think it's time where we cash in where his stock is really high and you can get a decent fee for him. I don't think he's going to make the grade at them because I don't think he's ever going to stay fit to take the opportunity.
We were having a debate, me and Sim, between Troy Parrott and Dane Scarlett about next season, about who we potentially think is further ahead. 2 years difference. I mean, who do you think has a bigger future?
Look, I would say at the minute it's hard not to argue that Troy Parrott is ahead because he's gone out to the Dutch league to a team that was, his relegation fodder, and he scored, a lot of goals for them and done well for them. He's proven that in other leagues that he can score goals. So I think right now Parrott is probably ahead of Dane Scarlett. But like you said, Dane Scarlett has time on his side. Troy Parrott's 22 now, and it's only real the first season that he's had out on loan where he's really maybe come to the prominence and got a bit of a reputation. Dane Scarlett still has 2 seasons left to be able to do that. So right now, I think, Parrott's ahead in the development. But the fact that Scarlett has time on his side, I think is why he'll be kept around over Troy Parrott.
Well, Dave, that is all the players that I've got to go through. It's been a bit of a long haul video, so thank you for sticking around with us this long. But yeah, we've got a lot more content to come your way. I hope you enjoyed and stuck around with us this long. But Dave, thank you very much. And please, everyone, do go and subscribe to David Harris of the Irish Hotspur. Any last words from you, Dave?
No, look, hopefully I lived up to your expectation, boys. You put a lot of pressure on me, bringing me in here as an academy expert and stuff like that. Hopefully you guys out there enjoyed it. Get your comments in below. And thanks for listening.
Big up to you, Dave. Thank you once again. But thank you everyone else out there. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.